It's one thing to write an address, it's another thing to reassemble it. Hold that thought. I think you did a pretty good job of knocking it off in order. Yeah. Well, you heard him. This is the beginning of the academic year, but nobody is ready for this. Our pre-Labor Day startup probably hits the faculty worst. Only yesterday, it seemed, we put our regalia into mothballs, set out to do the work of the summer, a season that in May stretched for month after month in our imagination. Now it's time to stop, even though no project is actually finished. And worse yet, the writing that looked pretty well made in early June started to crumble in mid-August. And then there are the seasonal nightmares that plague a professor on the cusp of September. Dreams in which you cannot find the proper classroom, in which your tongue clings to the roof of your mouth, or suddenly you see yourself standing in front of fully clothed students when you yourself are naked as the day you were born. Welcome to my world. Teachers have it bad, but so do administrators and staff who keep the school running throughout the year, not to mention year after year. They have had the quadrangle to themselves all summer, have recently discovered, as they do every June, that they could actually do their jobs better without the rest of us making trouble. Now we come back and spoil things, and the mayhem starts all over again. Which brings me to students. Mayhem is the theme word there. Some of whom are experienced in the ways of 409 Prospect Street, and therefore invaluable to showing the ropes to the rest of us. We need them to explain what a reading week actually is. You've got 5 of them this year. And how in the world to find the Now in Prayer Chapel, which is buried somewhere in the bowels of the library. Returning students can even afford to be a little smug toward those who have just arrived. After all, they know where everything is, have figured out how to handle New Haven, are no longer shy about being at Yale, and have calculated exactly how much of the sign reading needs to be done. Then there are those students who are brand new and embarking on a Divinity school education with great and very various expectations. Some are preparing for ordained ministry, trying to understand just what it means. So little time, so many people to please, so many gnawing questions about vocation. Others arrive with a career rather than a vocation in mind. They have an academic discipline they want to pursue rather than something spooky like a calling. For them, YDS may be stage 1 of graduate school, and who knows, if everything goes well, the grades are good, the professors are encouraging, there may be a PhD further along the horizon. But of course, this kind of neat sorting out is much too neat. Vocation and career overlap, and a profession can easily be a ministry, though with a different costume and pay scale. Students also change their course midstream and find that a degree in divinity can lead quite naturally to law or social work or secondary school teaching, or indeed the myriad other things that divinity school graduates do with or despite their degrees. Last but not least, there are those who come here looking for God and hope that doing a degree program isn't going to prevent that search from going forward. These folks are often very difficult for faculty to advise, and may be hard for other students, especially those who have figured it out already. They don't want a degree in divinity so much as they want divinity. Their patience with academia can be small, their appetite for something they can't quite name, enormous. They come from every denominational background or arrive with little or no religious background. They round out the motley crew that we are. Now, given our very mixed and motley bag, I want to propose a patron saint to invoke this year. Jacob, the wandering Aramaean who is our spiritual ancestor, the man who wrestled one night in the waters of the Jabbok, and at least according to the cheeky Emily Dickinson, worsted God. Jacob's wrestling in the river is one of the most famous passages in Scripture, a showstopper in either Hebrew or English, versatile enough to inspire a pious Charles Wesley hymn and an irreverent Dickinson poem. It may also be powerful and bizarre enough to get us to think about something other than the distractions of moving in and settling down. But as always, to get the force of any particular biblical story, what you student newcomers will learn to call a pericope, you have to take in the bigger picture. For what happens in the river Jabbok is only one eddy in a stream of Genesis narrative that originates in Ur of the Chaldees and flows forward to Egypt. To feel its full effect requires a backstory and some hint of what's to follow. Now, the background, given the occasion of a solemn Yale assembly, might appropriately be the measured tones of the Deuteronomist. A wandering Aramaean was my father. He went down into Egypt, lived there as an alien, few in number, and there he became a great nation, mighty and populous. Thus rendered, the backstory takes on an easy smoothness. There's a sense of inevitability to it, as well as the dignity and the cadence of a liturgy. Yet leave behind the blessed assurance of sacred history, and what you find is a really weird family story, more complicated and vexed even than your own family story. Indeed, you get something like the world of Jerry Springer or Dr. Phil or the Bravo Channel. Where to begin telling Jacob's tale? Is it with grandfather Abraham, who hears a voice and goes wherever it sends him, whether across the Negev or up the slopes of Mount Moriah? Or with grandmother Sarah, who to her anguish and shame cannot have a baby? Or do you start with Father Isaac, who is offered up to God as a sacrifice and lives to tell the tale? Isaac, who subsequently doesn't seem able to do very much on his own, except to pass off his bride as his sister, when that seems like a good idea. That bride, Rebecca, is afflicted by barrenness like her mother-in-law until she gets double what she asks for. Not one child, but two. Two raging male fetuses who make her life a living hell in the womb and a trial thereafter. Or should we focus on our ancestor Jacob himself, the slightly younger of those warring twins, who was unsuccessful in his uterine attempt to be born first, but then spent the rest of his life making sure he always turned out on top? He buys a birthright that doesn't really belong to him. Then in the course of an elaborate camouflage, all staged for his benefit by Mom, he at once deceives a doddering near-blind father and egregiously swindles his only brother, his twin. Now, there's enough here for a cable mini-series on television. The plot continues to thicken once Jacob on the lamb escapes his brother's household, his fury, discovers his true love, Rachel, or rather, after the delirious wedding night, he discovers his love's older sister, Leah, who has been substituted between the sheets by her father, Jacob's uncle Laban. And why not, this family being what it is? Makes a kind of perverse sense. Laban has 2 daughters to marry off, and as it turns out, a son-in-law he can exploit for roughly 2 decades of indentured service. He has in Jacob a trickster he can enjoy tricking. During these years of minding Laban's flocks, the tents of Jacob turn into a stud farm. Night after night, he's commanded by his wives, their female servants, who force him into fatherhood again and again with the command, "Give me children or I shall die." What's love got to do with it? 10 boys and 1 girl are born to Jacob, 4 different women, all merging with a larger biological push to increase and multiply. Jacob's population explosion, moreover, is not only about children, but about herds of livestock, sheep, goats, all speckled and striped and mottled. When it's time to return to Canaan, where the likely to be still smoldering brother Esau remains to be seen, Jacob marshals his forces. Wives Leah and Rachel, concubines Zilpah and Bilhah, the accumulated sons and the single daughter, not to mention the flocks and herds and camels. He prepares for the worst by sending the best ahead of him, as wave after wave of animals make their way across the river, followed by the family he's raised up. This gradual staging of return presents a really odd instance of women and children first, since they are initially set in harm's way to provide a protective buffer for him before he sets foot on Esau's territory. But perhaps Jacob knows that everyone else is safe but him. There's really only one victim that Esau will have in mind. When we come to our passage, it's nightfall. Jacob's all alone. This is remarkable, for not only is he seen apart from all that he has required since running away from his brother in Canaan, but as far as we can tell, he's alone for the first time in 20 years. There's no entourage of flocks and family. There's just him. Is this aloneness meant to take us back to that other solitary night long ago, when he first fled from his brother's wrath? At that time, in the middle of nowhere, with a few rocks for a pillow, he laid himself down to sleep. He dreamt that a ladder descended from heaven to earth, with the Lord speaking to him from above, the God of Abraham and Isaac, who extends the same blessing of land, offspring, and protection that earlier had been given to grandfather and father. Coming to his senses, he builds an altar. He makes a sacrifice. He calls the place Bethel, literally the house of God, because that is what the middle of nowhere turns out to be. Now, 20 years later, at the ford of the river Jabbok, Jacob is again all alone. But then suddenly he's not. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, there's something else in that water, or is it someone else, whose idea of getting to know you is nothing less than an all-out assault. Tradition speaks of the bruiser as an angel, perhaps even Michael the archangel. The NRSV identifies him only as a he or a man. The Hebrew calls him a divine being, an Elohim. Whatever happens between the two of them goes on all night and lasts until daybreak. It also goes unreported. The teller of this tale has no interest in a blow-by-blow. There's no account of hammerlock or full Nelson. There's no eye gouging or hair pulling, such as one would read about in Homer, or see televised by the World Wrestling Federation. Strange for a wrestling match, it's not clear who wins. Jacob seems to have the upper hand before dawn's early light. He prevails, we're told. But then the other man finally takes him out by striking him on the hip socket. Jacob is literally thrown out of joint. Is this fair? Says the first-year MDiv student. A divine being pulling rank when things are going badly for him and arbitrarily changing the rules of engagement? There's no referee to decide the case, nor, come to think of it, does fairness in general have much to do with heavenly beings, or for that matter, with Genesis as a whole. I mean, just ask Hagar, Ishmael, and Esau. With Jacob's injury, the wrestling stops. But Jacob himself doesn't. He doesn't let go of his opponent for a minute. Instead, he holds on, even when the man says the time is flying and it's really time to go. He holds on, like a terrier with a bone. He concedes no ground. I will not let you go unless you bless me. And a blessing is what he gets, which comes in the form of a new name. Israel. From his time in the womb, he had been a Jacob, a heel grabber, a supplanter, a struggler against the odds. But now you shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed. The mama's boy who is good in the kitchen has striven with God and with angels and has prevailed. Promised a multitude as infinite and far-flung as the dust of the earth, Jacob gets it all, at least in promise. The wandering Aramaean becomes our father, as generations of Jews and Christians in one way or another claim him as their own and call him blessed. The sense of a happy ending spills over into the next chapter, when it turns out that Esau, rather than setting out to murder Jacob, wants to love him. Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Jacob is stunned, as well he might be, because he certainly doesn't deserve this. Truly to see your face, he tells his brother, is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favor. But happiness in this world is short-lived. And very soon, as the story continues, blessing and favor seem to disappear into the dust of the earth. Jacob's one daughter, Dinah, is raped, then hideously avenged by her brothers, who take matters out of their father's hand and into their own. One son, Reuben, sleeps with Jacob's concubine, Bilhah, the mother of two of Jacob's children, which is to say, with two of Reuben's brothers. Another son, Judah, sires with a woman twins. He thinks that the woman is a prostitute. No, she's not. She's his daughter-in-law. And from their issue come twins. Jacob's favorite son, Joseph, might easily have been murdered by his brothers. Instead, they sell him into slavery in Egypt. Why, you may be asking yourselves, is the convocation speaker choosing to open the academic year with this convoluted and sorry account? Plus, it's hot. Is it to remind the incoming students that the Bible is more a cautionary tale than an exemplary one? That God consistently works with people you would never want to meet, but who are in fact versions of you, albeit you on a very, very bad day. Maybe. Yet what interests me most in the story of Jacob's wrestling in the river are two details I've not yet mentioned. They're noteworthy in their own right, I think, but they strike me as poignant for all of us at this moment in our year's calendar, and especially for those who are just beginning their studies in divinity. Point one, the divine being who suddenly rises up from the river refuses to disclose his name. Make no mistake, he doesn't hesitate to ask for Jacob, "What is your name?" Nor does he scruple about changing that name on the spot. "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel." He will also confer, along with that name change, a blessing. But even though Jacob holds on tight, even though he begs his challenger with the Hebrew equivalent of the magic word, "Please tell me your name," the man will not in return deliver the goods. The commentators tell us why. To have someone's name is to have power over them. It's to call the shots. Not here. Divinity may let a human being come close, may even prevail from time to time. But sorry, Emily Dickinson, God is never worsted. Even Jacob realizes this for all his brashness. After the wrestling match, when he names the place Peniel, the face of God, he does so in order to memorialize the lesson of the encounter. Although he may have prevailed in the instant, he knows that his real blessing is to have gotten out alive. For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. Let us, children of this Jacob renamed Israel, take note. There are limits in every sense to our grasp. When it comes to the divine, we will always be surprised and worsted. God shows up in the middle of nowhere, at the ford of a river, in a dream, in a fight, and often in the dark when it's easiest to catch us unprepared and disarmed. We may say please all we want and stay awake as long as we can, but there are certain things, in the story it's a name, that not even the most persistent human will be able to grab hold of. There is no mastering divinity, no matter what your degree is called. But how wonderful that Jacob did the grabbing nonetheless. How wonderful that he was willing to take on all comers, to hold on till morning, to ask for what he wanted, even if he couldn't have it. In the end, he had to take no for an answer. But look what he got. A face-to-face vision, a new name for himself. And with it, could it be the identity of someone who not only wrestles with God, but wrestles on God's side, on God's behalf, in God's cause? It sounds marvelous, doesn't it? And yet it comes with a cost. Which leads me to my second point. Jacob is able to prevail against the divine being, at least for a time, but he's never the same again. He's wounded. He's struck in the hip. He walks away into a future limping because of his hip. Now, the teller of the tale is overtly interested in this fact because it has to do with food, with what you do or do not eat. It's an etiology. Oh, the cognoscenti who have been here before, yes. But more compelling to me is what Jacob's limp suggests about the danger of getting close to God. Inevitably, it hurts. It wounds. It changes the way you walk in the world. This assault on one's status quo is important to remember at the beginning of an academic year. You should be prepared for trouble because you're getting into it. You should also cautiously allow the trouble to happen. Soon it will become all too easy to study scripture or theology as if it were business as usual. Now, you can turn it into merely academic business if you want to. But in fact, this curriculum comes with a warning. It's dangerous. It can keep you up at night. And not only because there are so many pages to read or to write, it can keep you struggling because it's so full of hard sayings and difficult issues. be warned. You can lose sleep trying to figure out what's actually going on in the river that you're entering here. Are you fighting against or fighting alongside? Hey, and maybe it's just another fantasy after all, another ghost story from long ago that somehow has managed to keep bothering people when by all rights the whole thing should have disappeared with the Enlightenment's daybreak. If that's the case, then you're spending time and money giving an illusion a future. Do you really want to do that? Or to turn tables, what if you come here with an intellectual interest in religion as one subject among others, and then find yourself getting involved with it in some newly passionate way? Suddenly it's not just religion you're studying, fascinating though it is. Is there anything more fascinating? But there's something that seems to be studying you, taking your measure, taking you on. It feels as if you're being drawn in against your better judgment, as if someone were calling you, maybe giving you a new name, someone is messing with your life. You might drown. Now, I suggested a little while ago that studying divinity might be especially poignant for those who are, in one sense, doing it for the first time. I wanted them to be prepared for the disruptions to come, which may very well cause a wound, leave a limp. But this is no less true for those of us who have been at this work for a while. Nothing really gets easier. Divinity is inevitably disturbing, as what you used to be able to sit easy with becomes problematic. What you thought wasn't worth dealing with becomes the thing you can't let go of. What you once had under control refuses to be brought into your line. Yet, should we love the scary unknown, not fear it? Maybe this is what our patron Jacob would have us embrace about the river we're all entering now. You have at least a year together in time's ever-flowing stream. There will be occasions when it's best to hold on tight. There will be others when it's meet and right to let go. Limping is in the forecast, but so too is blessing. Both. There's absolutely no telling the outcome, but who in his or her right mind would prefer to stay on the shore where it's safe? Take heart. We are all in this together, in the company of many ancestors who have wrestled in the river millennia before us, like Jacob, hip out of socket, but still walking. May we carry on in his contentious tradition, whether we've been crossing the river for a long time, like me, or are only just entering it, like some of you. This will be my final beginning at YDS, and my hope is that you too find the joy and struggle and excitement of discovery that I've known here since 1976. This has been a place of blessing, as I hope it will be for all of you. And if I may turn Jacob's astonished exclamation at Peniel into a personal benediction and a wish, may you see God's face to face, and may your life be preserved. Amen.